Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week, we're going to be talking about what I'm calling my personal awakening map. This is something that I developed over this past week that really helped me sort through things and get in a much better place. I feel like things are just, they have been, as we know, this is a complete understatement, but with just how crazy everything is, it's really, really easy to get swept up in the momentum of the craziness. It's easy to get stuck there. It's easy to get, feeling like out of control and that, really feeling like hopeless and like there's no end in sight. So I wanted to share with you something that I created this week that helped me. My intention is that it will help you too. And again, I'm calling it my personal awakening map. And so I've put this together for you in a PDF, and you can get it for free. It's totally free. You can get it by going to my Telegram channel, and I'll link to that in the show notes, at the bottom of the show notes. But if you go into the Telegram channel, you're going to see at the top of the channel, there's a pinned post. And within that pinned post, that's where you'll find this document. So you might want to pause this and go get that document, download it, have it in front of you so that when we're talking through this, you'll see what I'm talking about. But if not, if you don't have time, that's fine too. You can always get it later and revisit it. But it is free. It's a free PDF, and it's in my Telegram channel, which I will link to in the show notes. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about how I came up with this and what I was thinking when I was doing this. So, after last week, and we talked last week about just getting away from all the madness that is thrown at us all the time. And at the end of last week's show, I talked about still believing in the same core principles that the show was built on and founded on. I mean, I don't believe those have changed personally, even with how crazy things are. I still believe in those core principles that we do create our own reality, that we do have a choice on the thoughts that we think, that, we don't have to believe all the thoughts that we think. And just because we think a thought, it's not, doesn't mean it's true. Right. So I was going through my journaling. I was trying some different things, that had worked for me in the past. And I've had this happen before where things that worked in the past just don't have the same effect certain times. And so I get, frustrated, and then it ends up not working for me. So what I ended up doing was developing something completely different. And I divided this into two sections, really thinking long-term, like looking at the long-term picture, and then deciding what I want my daily life to look at that incorporates that long-term picture. So what I started with, and you'll see in the PDF, is really the first page of this. It talks about thinking long-term. And I asked several questions in this section, and these are questions that I went through myself. And the first question is, what is my lasting legacy? So what do I want to be remembered for? What do I want to contribute to society? How do I want to help others? And how do I want my family and friends to remember me? I thought this was a really good question because it really helped me get outside of myself. It helped me to think from a much bigger picture. It helped me focus on something completely different than what I had been, right? And it helped me, it got me going in this more positive direction. So thinking through that, and then thinking about, what do I want my world to look like, right? It's very easy for us to know what we don't want in our life, right? We spend a lot of time in that, and especially lately, I'm sure. So taking some time to focus on what you do want in your life, like thinking about how you want your relationships to be, your career, your finances, spirituality, like any other area that's important to you. What do you want that to look like right now? And I've done this question a lot. I've talked about this question several times on the show, but it's really important when you're thinking about what you want your world to look like, not to answer the question from the perspective of what you think you can have. It's really opening yourself up to what you really want, right? Even if it doesn't look possible right now, even if it doesn't look like that's even an option, even if you feel like you have 5,000 obstacles in the way, looking at this question, how do I want my world to look? From the perspective of what you really want it to be, right? Not what you think what it can have. It starts to get you on this, this path of thinking outside of what it feels like is the only options right now. So how do I want my world to look? And then the second part of that is, how do I want my world to feel? So along with identifying how you want your world to look, feelings are a huge part of that, right? How you want to feel on a daily basis is huge. How you feel daily is what's setting you up for long term. So if we continue to feel this chaos and this madness and get swept up in the momentum of all that, we're going to continue to get that going forward. And the only way we break away from that is to stop that pattern. We have to shift the perspective. We have to start going in a different direction. And it's not always easy at first. Sometimes it feels like it's impossible. Sometimes it feels like you take one step forward to take 20 steps back. But all of that's okay. There's no right or wrong. You don't have to get it all right on the first day. The only, like, I guess you'd say, real requirement is that you start to move in a direction that feels better for you. And your feelings are your indicator for that. Your feelings are your guide. They're your gauge. They're going to tell you if you're on the right path. So do you want to feel more joy, more appreciation, more freedom, love, feelings of empowerment, or passion, enthusiasm, eagerness, or happiness, right? Like, how do you want your world to feel? When you start to identify that, and you can think of this long term, right? You can think of this, how do you want to feel in the long run? Like, what do you want almost like your default setting to be, right? So how do I want my world to look? How do I want my world to feel? And then the next part is focus on what I can control. This exercise right here was probably one of the biggest things that I did this past week that helped me shift and get out of feeling as bad as I was feeling. Going through this and thinking about, okay, there's a lot of things that I feel like I don't have control over, but what do I actually have control over in my life, right? Like, what can I control? And so here's some of the things I wrote on my list. So I can control what I eat, right? I can plan my eating. I can eat foods that feel good to me. I can eat foods that are good for me. So I can control what I eat. I can control how I move my body, right? I can control the workouts I do. I can control, I pretty much every day I take the dog for a walk. Gets me out of the house. The dog absolutely loves it. He has like the time of his life doing it. And so I can control how I move my body, right? So I can do things that feel good. I don't have to do things that, oh God, I hate this workout, right? No, I can control how I move my body. I can control the show, right? This is my podcast. I can control the message that I put out there. I can focus on having an uplifting show. I can focus on helping the listeners, like all of you, right? All of my listeners, I can focus on helping you feel good. And that was really my intention with this, was to be able to do that and give you something that you can tangibly take away from this and something that will help you too. So some other things I can focus on that I can control. My finances, right? I can pay off debts if I want to. I can stay within guidelines that I've set for myself with spending, right? Like, that's one of the things I've noticed this year in 2020. I've, used spending as a way to try to comfort myself, which, didn't really work in the end. So I can start to recognize that pattern, right? And I can do something different about it. I don't have to continue down that path. I can control my mood, right? I can focus on the good. I can lead from this place of, love and understanding and compassion and forgiveness, even though my knee-jerk reaction might be to instantly get pissed or instantly get annoyed, right? I can stop that pattern. I can change it. I can decide to do something different. I can also focus on what media I don't consume, right? I can focus on content that feels good, or just not even focus on any of it all and use my time in different ways, right? I've noticed I've started over this past week to, instead of doing my usual scrolling, the doomsday scrolling, right? I'm reading books now. I'm getting away from that because it doesn't feel good to me. I can focus on how much sleep I get, right? I can go to bed earlier. I can make time. I can make time for that, right? I can actually, instead of saying I'm going to do this, I can actually do the thing, right? I can actually go to bed earlier. I can focus on meditation, right? I can choose that I'm going to do that. That's something that always helps me. I tend to do it in the afternoon. It just is what works for me. But I can focus on doing that, right? Like I can do that, and I know that feels good to me. I know I like it, so I have the choice, and I can control that. And the last thing I identified, and I know there's more, but just for the sake of time, these were some of the important ones I felt like talking about today. But I can focus on that I'm kind to myself, right? I can be kind to myself today and every day with my thoughts and how I treat myself. So you might think through this, and there might be more, but these are just some examples that I came up with that really, really helped me when I start to look at focusing on what I could control. Okay, so then this last part of the first page of this personal awakening map is putting it all together. So now you know what you want to be remembered for, how you want your world to look and feel, and what you can control. You can start to think about what this means for you on a daily basis. So like I mentioned, like you can start to shift away from the things that don't feel good and start to focus on the important things that you've identified throughout the first page of this this personal awakening map, right? You can take steps, even if it seems small or, like it may not matter. Any movement forward matters. And you can start to take the steps to work towards what you want. In doing that, you're moving away from what you don't want, right? Because we can only focus really on one thing at a time. So if we're focusing forward on what it is that we want, that's helping us move towards that future, like I mentioned, that future state of where we want to be. And so then the second page of the document is what I called the daily plan of your personal awakening map. So this is something you could use as prompts to journal with. In the morning when you wake up, you can use these questions to journal with. You could think through them. Like maybe when you're getting ready in the morning, you could start to think about these questions. I've done this a lot of different ways. Like, well, I'll have like the questions written down and I'll think through them. I'll sometimes write them in my journal. You could keep it with you, like a printout of this, and like look at it throughout the day to see if you're on track for different things. You can do whatever feels good for you. There's no right or wrong with this. My intention with this was just to get you started, right? Just to get you thinking in this direction about, okay, now you know what you want your long-term, outlook to be. What can you start to do daily that gets you to that place? And so the first question I ask is, what would feel good today? So what are some things that you could add into your day that would feel good, right? Like I'll ask my question that a lot, or I'll ask myself that question a lot, like what would feel good right now, right? And sometimes it's just laying down. Sometimes it's picking up a book. Sometimes it's working on something for the podcast, an idea I've had that I've been putting off. It could be anything, right? Taking the dog for a walk. Even if you're out somewhere and you think, wow, those flowers look pretty. I'm going to buy those for myself today, right? Anything that makes you feel good, it's helpful to start identifying that and look at that, especially as you start your day, because then you're able to incorporate those things into your day and actually do those things that help you to feel better. The next question is, how do I intend for my day? Or what do I intend for my day? I've used this question in a lot of different ways. And this one seems to be, for me, the best way to really start to energetically pick up on what I want to happen throughout my day, right? Like how I want to show up in the world, how do I want my day to go? How do I want my interactions with family, friends, coworkers, or strangers to be today, right? Do I want it to be most likely good, happy, right? Calm, like I show up calm, my energy is even, I'm interacting, even if it's situations that may have been tough before, right? We can break that pattern and we can show up differently. We can react differently. We can decide how we want our day to go. And we can, when we decide how we want our day to go, we're bringing new energy when we show up into that day, right? We get to choose that we want to see more of, whatever. I want to see more, love in my daily interactions with people. I want to see happy people. I want to see people who, that I get along with. Whatever it is for you, you get to start thinking about that. Like, what do you intend for your day, and how do you want to feel? And when you identified on the previous page of this about how you want your world to look and feel, like in the long term, you can break that down to what that means for you on a daily basis. So how do I want my world to look and feel today, right? What do I want to see more of today? How do I want to feel when I interact with this person, when I get in the car and drive here, when I, whatever it is, what do I intend for my day? The next one, how can I practice more compassion, forgiveness, love, patience, and understanding today? So this is something that I've not been doing, I don't feel like, lately. I just feel like I'm irritated all the time. I like snap at people and I don't like it, and no one likes it, right? And usually when we're doing that, we're doing it out of some element of pain in our life, right? Like we're struggling somewhere else and it's coming out in this way to people who usually have nothing to do with it. And so how can I bring more, compassion or forgiveness or love or understanding to myself? And how can I offer that to other people? So maybe it's changed behavior, right? Instead of falling back into these old patterns, or maybe it's just choosing to show up differently today and getting that momentum started so that future days are different too. Whatever that looks like for you, I think this is a really good question to think through and identify for yourself in your life. And the next question is, and then I've got like ... And so am I doing the things that I identified on the previous page that I have control over, right? Like the things I mentioned, like I can control what I eat. So am I eating nourishing foods, right? Am I nourishing my body with what I'm eating today? I can control how I move my body, right? So am I moving my body in ways that feel good today? Am I sleeping enough? Am I spending the time that I know benefits me to quiet my mind, right? Am I actually doing that? Do I have time set aside for that today? Am I doing something fun, right? Am I spending some time on my hobbies today? Or am I checking in with myself to see how much media I'm consuming? Am I checking in on my mood? And if I think about, if you think back to some of the things that you listed again on that focus on what you can control section on the previous page of the document, if you pay attention and see if you're actually focusing on those areas, and if you're not, and you're finding yourself you're in a bad mood, it's not too late to shift your focus and change your day, right? It's amazing how quickly we can shift out of a bad mood and start. And I'm not saying you go from like feeling completely terrible to on top of the world, but you could go pretty easily from feeling terrible to slightly better, then a little bit better, right? You can incrementally move up that scale. That's doable for sure. So paying attention, checking in with yourself, seeing how you feel, and seeing what you can do to shift yourself if you're not in a really good place. And then if you are in a good place, awesome, right? So then you can start to look back on your day like, okay, what made this day so awesome for me? Like, what did I do differently today? How did it go? How did I show up? What was my energy? What was my intention behind what I was doing? What was I thinking, right? All of that kind of stuff is so important when we tune into ourselves and, we're able to find those answers. Okay, the next question, what do I need to detox from my life today? So we talked about this a little bit last week, but I thought this was a good question. Is there anything that you need to remove from your life to feel better, right? Are there people that are draining you that maybe you can't remove from your life, but do you have a way to, limit your interaction with them? Is there something you're eating like every day that you're like, oh, I shouldn't eat this today, or I always feel like crap after I eat this, right? Like, I don't think food wise, that telling ourselves we shouldn't have this or that isn't a good mindset to have. But is there ways you can shift out of that, right? Or think about it differently, or, anything that maybe feels too much for you, right? You might find it in this category of needing to detox from, and see what you can do to work towards eliminating it or at least reducing it in your life. Because really the goal with all of these kinds of questions is to move away from these states of suffering and pain and into a better feeling place, right? And it doesn't mean you're going to go from feeling completely terrible to on top of the world, because I know sometimes for people, that's just, people don't even bother to try because they don't think they can make that jump. And I just know in my own life, you don't have to go from 0 to 100 to get, results, to feel better, to start to move in that direction. So figuring out or thinking about or identifying what you might need to detox from yourself, I think is a very helpful thing to think about as you go about your day. And then lastly, and maybe one of the most important things is, am I being kind to myself today, right? Like, especially if you're going through this and you're trying, you want to look at things differently, and you want your life to be different, and you want to have things, you want to experience the world differently and show up different energetically. It's so key. It's so key to be kind to yourself as you go through this, right? And because if you don't, all of us do this, right? But we spend so much energy beating ourselves up that we don't have any energy left to focus on the things that we do want, right? Because we've spent all this energy beating ourselves up. So working to be kinder to ourselves makes us feel happier and empowered and free. And this gives us that space that we really, really want to invite those other things into our lives that make us feel good, right? That are exciting and freeing and gets us to just this better feeling place. So those were the questions I came up for this. And hopefully this gets you thinking about maybe some other things you can identify in your life. Maybe there's questions that work better for you, or whatever works for you. That's the key with all of this, right? Everything we talk about, take what works for you and leave the rest. But my intention with this, my goal with this, was to help you think through this kind of stuff. I know this made a big, big difference for me this past week to think about things this way, especially, like I said, I cannot stress enough how important it was and how good it felt to identify my focus on what I could control. When I went through that list, that really helped. And then I found myself, if I was drifting away into these old habits of trying to go back to things that made me feel terrible, I could bring myself back. No, wait a minute. I can focus on these things. I have a list right here of whatever it is, 8 or 9 things that I can control. And that's huge, right? Especially huge when it feels like there isn't anything we can control, when everything's being controlled for us. This zeroing in on what we can control gets the right momentum going, that gets us in a better place. So I hope this helps you like it helped me. That was really my intention with this. Like I said, I created this PDF for you to work through, and you can get it again in my Telegram channel. It'll be pinned at the top of the Telegram channel. It's free, like I mentioned. So all you have to do is go to Telegram, to the Create What You Speak Telegram channel. I'll link to it in the show notes, but join the channel, download the document, and then we can talk more about it. I'd love to know what you think. I'd love to know how you're feeling these days. Feel free to email me, sloanfremont@pm.me. That's sloanfremont@pmprotonmail.me. My social media these days, I'm on Parler, Mayway, of course, the Telegram channel, and I just joined Gab, which I really, really am liking. So please find me on any of those channels and let's connect. And don't forget, I also still have my 33 Days of Magic course where you can take what you learn from the show one step further and apply it in your own life. So I would love to hear your thoughts about that as well if you do end up getting that. All right, that's it for this week. Remember, you can find more about me on my website, sloanfremont.com. And lastly, as always, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.